The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Welcome to The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu. We got a great show for you this week. Lots of great topics, of course. A lot of yelling. Speaking of which, Patrick Waugh, we're watching you. And Greg Buchanan, we're watching you as well.
I never yell.
Well, we'll see what happens after this. Maybe some Bruce Boudreau, Patrick Waugh action will go on.
Unless I get a parking ticket, and we'll talk to the city about that later.
All right, sounds good. I'm also joined by our guest for today, Chris McQuaid. You are the Rustlers curling coach. And how are things going with you and the team so far?
Not so far so good. We've been on the ice one night. Had a lot of lady curlers show up this year, but not a lot of male curlers, so hoping we get a few more out at our next tryout on the 16th.
All right. Well, I want to ask you this question because you are a coach. You've been behind the bench. You're a GM.
Yep.
Now, have you ever gotten to a shouting match with the opposition coach? And I will say this, and the reason why is because, of course, Patrick Waugh, first game making a statement, of course, didn't like the hit that was laid out on Nate McKinnon very late in the game, in a game that they won 6-1 over Anaheim. So he decided to take his frustration out on a certain player. Bruce Boudreau didn't like that, and then all of a sudden they started having this shouting match, and the partition nearly killing the cameraman who was right underneath getting all this stuff. But from what we saw, is that Patrick Waugh being Patrick Waugh, as we know how feisty he was in net, how he played? Or was this just a way to draw attention to Colorado because everybody's talking about them, and of course they're playing the Leafs coming up?
Well, for myself, I haven't yelled at a coach this week. Cold Lake's probably a good possibility on Friday night. But Patrick Waugh is a fiery guy. He was a fiery guy as a player. But there's certain things you do as a coach maybe that you get away with in the junior level that you don't do the NHL level. Patrick Waugh did that a lot in the Quebec League, and he's been known for yelling at the referees, yelling at the other players. I understand yelling at Boudreau, but I don't understand yelling at players. That's one thing I kind of draw the line against, is any coaching of my team doesn't yell at the other players. And if the coach and the other team yells at our players, then we get very upset about it. So I think you leave the players play the game. And if the coaches want to have a little bit of argument about it, let the coaches go at it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if it, in my situation, of course, in curling, it wouldn't get as heated as in hockey, but
you never know.
You bring it up with the other coach, and I think the players, I agree, would be off limits. That's a little bit Bush League, in my opinion, too. But it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the year goes and see if he calms down or if he's going to be still the same old Patrick Waugh. It
doesn't seem that way because, of course, after the post-game comments, he said, you know what, I don't know what Boudreau's talking about. This guy, I wouldn't say initially was insane. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but he's like, I don't know what he's talking about, whereas Bruce Boudreau was like, well, the reason why I yelled at him was because he's yelling at players. You want to yell at me, don't yell at the players. And that was the whole topic. Now, you guys obviously sound unanimous that players are a no-go, and you agree with what Bruce Boudreau was saying.
Yeah, I agree with him. I also, I stick up for Patrick Waugh for the fact that what happened to his player on the ice. Does that give him the right to yell at members of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks players? No. Does it give him the right to yell at the coaching staff? Yes. At the other time too, what is he doing on the ice? Was it a 5-1 game at that time?
6-1 at that point.
6-1 at that time. Just less than 2 minutes left. He's your star rookie he's had a great debut. What the heck is he doing on the ice when you know it could get a little Western?
That's right, yeah. And it is good, I guess, as a player and probably as a fan of Colorado. You'd like to see your coach sticking up for you, but yeah, that's a great point. And it's Patrick Waugh. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. The
biggest knock against the Avalanche, too, over the last number of years, that they're a vanilla team. And when I say a vanilla team, they have nothing to them. They're a solid, hard-working team, but they don't have a lot of sandpaper. They don't have a lot of grit. I think Patrick's kind of brought that on the bench.
And is bringing the attention to them.
Yeah,
Speaking of attention, of course, I'm going to talk about Ed Snyder, the chairman of the Philadelphia Flyers, coming out talking about the philosophy, the way they play. That Broad Street Bullies mentality they had in the 70s, carried through the 80s, Legion of Doom in the 90s, and so forth. 0-3, fire Peter Laviolette. Was that a mistake move by them? Was this too late of a move to get rid of a coach they should have got rid of a year ago?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see how that plays out, but I think it was definitely surprising. I know that the fans are a bit restless there now after missing the playoffs, and somebody's going to have to take the fall for it. But I was surprised after their off-season moves they didn't give Laviolette a little more of a chance to see what he's got with that team.
I don't think he's being judged for an 0-3 start. He's being judged for an 0-3 start. He's being judged for 1-5-1 preseason, and he's being judged for a really dull training camp. You know,
the body of work even last year bugged them
yeah,
too.
and a certain member of the Flyers even said to me, it was a terrible training camp. You know, one of the worst he's been around. And yeah, so.
All right. Well, what do you think of Craig Berube? He certainly fits that Ed Snyder role of a team with that type of culture. He was a physical guy, was a bruiser. Is he a good fit for Philadelphia, and can he actually help this team improve? They have the talent, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting move for sure. He actually does have a lot of coaching experience in the Flyers system. So while he might look like just kind of your basic goon, I think that he's actually got a lot of hockey knowledge. And yeah, he's, I mean, it's tough. I think he'll probably be a pretty good coach for him. And we'll see how it plays out.
One thing they say about tough guys being coaches, and you know, tough guys, when you are playing the game, you have to know the game even better than the skilled players. Because as a tough guy, you don't get a lot of ice time. You might get 8-10 minutes in the entire game. So you got to make the most of it. So you got to know your assignments. So I think tough guys probably possibly even know the game better than some of the skilled guys.
All right, I want to talk about fighting. This has been a topic that has taken over, especially the first 3-4 days of the hockey season. George Peros, of course, getting a concussion and what happened to him in his fight with Colton Orr, not once, but twice. And then you also saw multiple fights throughout the weekend. Is there going to be a deterrent eventually where we're going to see fighting abolished, or is there any type of reason why fighting should still be in the game? Because you have guys like Stevie Yzerman, Ray Shero, you have, was it Dave Boland,
Yeah,
Jim Rutherford, GMs, former players that are saying, you know what, I think we should take it out of the game.
I think there's still place for it in the game if it's legitimate and it's to fire your team up. I mean, there was that article that last week that talked about the staged fights and how guys premeditate it and they just know when they're going to drop the gloves. And I mean, that's strictly entertainment value. But I think, I mean, I defer to the hockey coach on this one, but definitely think that in the right place. I mean, there's a place for it in the game and it fires your team up. But
You know, there is definitely a place in the game, and it changes the momentum. You know, you're down by a couple of goals. You need something to turn the tide on your team, and sometimes dropping the mitts and going after a guy. But tough guys have to fight tough guys, and that's the code of the law of the Great West, and that's the code of the law on the ice. Is that tough guys fight tough guys. Tough guys don't go after skilled players. If you want to ban fighting, and the thing is, you talk to anybody that plays overseas and plays in that Russian league where there's not a lot of fighting, it's probably the most dirtiest team or league you've ever seen. Paul Maurice is one that coached in the Russian league, the KHL, and he said he was scared. He was scared for some of his players from the spearing, from the cross-checking, just playing down dirty hockey. The reason why? Because there's no fighting. There's no one policing it out there. All of a sudden you're sticking somebody, you're spearing somebody, and you know what, I might have to drop my gloves and get the, you know what, beat out of me because I did that. There's none of that in the Russian league. There's that here, and you don't see it as dirty as in the NHL as you see in Russia.
There's a lot of arguments to that, but we're going to have to hold on that. We're going to have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers and the bizarre game that happened last night. They finally played hockey only for 20 minutes. We'll tell you more coming up.